WNBC TV, New York.
This is the 11th hour with anchorman Jim Hartz, the weather with Frank Field, sports with Tim Ryan, and a movie review by Gene Shalit. The news is brought to you by Barney's America House and International House, 7th Avenue and 17th Street, and by North American Rockwell, where science gets down to business. Now here is Jim Hartz.
Good evening. Good evening, I'm Chuck Scarborough. This is NewsCenter 4.
March 1974. Chuck came to NewsCenter 4, as it was called.
Needless to say, people are being asked to stay away from the crash site because they have more people there than they need. What you have been watching here is television in the raw, a news story in the making. Much of what has been said here and elsewhere is wrong information only because we know nothing truer at the time, and that will be left to some future determination by those people who will be assigned to investigate the air crash at JFK today. For all of us who work at NewsCenter 4 at JFK and our hard-working tech crews, thank you for watching, and until 7:30, good evening, everybody.
WNBC TV, New York. Jeopardy will not be seen tonight, so that we may bring you the following NewsCenter 4 special program. Here is Chuck Scarborough.
Good evening once again. An Eastern Airlines 727 jetliner, Flight 66.
This is WNBC TV, New York. NewsCenter 4 is brought to you tonight by the Fur Vault at Alexander's.
Good evening, I'm Chuck Scarborough. This is NewsCenter 4, and you're looking at the results of a mistake.
Decision 78 continues with the Tri-State Report. Brought to you by American Airlines. Now here are Chuck Scarborough and Jack Cafferty.
Well, good evening to you, and welcome to NewsCenter 4's coverage of election returns in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. We'll be here throughout the evening to keep you up to date with all the results in the metropolitan area.
We will do our best to bring you the excitement of tonight's winners as well as the disappointment of today's losers throughout the evening.
This is WNBC TV, New York.
NewsCenter 4 at 11 with special election coverage. Brought to you by Citibank and by Amoco.
Good evening to you once again. I'm Chuck Scarborough. Jack Cafferty and I will be bringing you the latest election results this evening.
This is WNBC TV, New York. NewsCenter 4 is brought to you by Barney's American House and International House.
Good evening, I'm Pia Lindstrom. On the rundown for NewsCenter 4 tonight, Richard Herron is found guilty of manslaughter in the claw-hammer slaying of Bonnie Garland.
Looks like a good time. That's our news for this evening. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Chuck Scarborough. Have a nice night. See you tomorrow.
The Tri-State Area's first report. This is NewsCenter 4, live at 5. From WNBC Television, this is NewsCenter 4.
Good evening.
From WNBC Television, this is NewsCenter 4.
Good evening, I'm Chuck Scarborough.
And I'm Sue Simmons.
WNBC Television, New York. This is NewsCenter 4.
Our ambassador.
From WNBC TV New York, this is Live at 5 with Jack Cafferty and Sue Simmons.
Good afternoon. Another New York City subway train has gone off its tracks, the 13th derailment so far.
From WNBC TV New York, this is Live at 5 with Jack Cafferty, Carol Jenkins for Sue Simmons, and Al Roker with the weather.
Good evening. New York's war on crack is now a united fight with a step-by-step battle plan.
From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and John Hambrick. From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York with Ralph Penza and Anna Bond.
Good evening.
From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and John Hambrick. This is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons.
Good evening. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, touchdown. Those gears, 10 feet.
This is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons.
Good evening. The United States chalked up another towering achievement in space technology today.
The Space Shuttle Columbia and its two-man crew hurtled through the most dangerous moments of their flight into...
From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons.
Good evening. It's been a night of natural disasters all across the nation.
This is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons.
Good evening. Sue is off tonight. I'm Pat Harper. Two desperate American hostages make a televised plea for freedom.
This is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons.
Good evening. The Mets even the World Series will have team coverage of their incredible comeback in Boston.
But first, we have a grim development in a tragedy that struck us here at NBC today, a tragedy heard by millions.
The Miracle Mets go all the way at Shea.
This is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons.
Well, good evening. The New York Mets are baseball's 1986 world champions.
Yeah, and they won the World Series tonight the way they won virtually all of their postseason games. Gutsy, heart-stopping, come-from-behind baseball.
From WNBC TV New York, this is Live at 5 with Jack Cafferty, Sue Simmons, and Al Roker with the weather.
Good afternoon.
From WNBC TV in New York, this is Live at 5 with Jack Cafferty, Sue Simmons, and Al Roker with the weather.
Good evening.
From WNBC TV in New York, this is Live at 5 with Sue Simmons and Tony Guida.
From WNBC TV New York, this is Live at 5 with Jack Cafferty, Sue Simmons, and Al Roker with the weather.
Good afternoon. Members of the UN Security Council meet to try to end the Iran-Iraq war.
From WNBC TV New York, this is Live at 5 with Jack Cafferty, Sue Simmons, and Al Roker with the weather.
Good afternoon. It is the cops versus the firefighters, and City Hall is caught right in the middle.
The issue is who will be in charge during emergencies, firemen or emergency service cops?
From WNBC TV in New York, this is Live at 5 with Jack Cafferty, Sue Simmons, and Al Roker with the weather.
Still ahead tonight, the end of an era in radio. We'll go live to the sign-off of WNBC AM.
And Roger Grimsby is standing by with a report on the disappearance of some of the most famous call letters in broadcasting, WNBC.
From WNBC TV in New York, this is Live at 5 with Jack Cafferty, Sue Simmons, and Al Roker with the weather.
Good evening. A black teenager is shot to death.
From WNBC TV in New York, this is Live at 5 with Sue Simmons and Tony Guida.
Good evening, everyone. Sue and Tony are off tonight. I'm Mary Sabella with Ralph Penza. As people all over the world celebrate Christmas, Romania's ousted president Nicolae Ceausescu is executed.
In fact, tonight, Bucharest TV is reporting that Ceausescu...
From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Pat Harper.
Good evening.
From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons.
Good evening.
From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Pat Harper.
Good evening. Police have arrested 2 men wanted for the murder.
From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Pat Harper.
Good evening. Oliver North wraps up his testimony before the Iran-Contra Committee and is immediately contradicted by his former boss.
Oliver North ended his testimony today the way he began it a week ago.
From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons.
Good evening. A winter storm blasts our area and promises to make a mess of tomorrow morning's rush hour.
Well, 3 to 5 inches of snow are expected in and around New York City by morning, but...
From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough and Sue Simmons.
Good evening. A landmark decision in the New Jersey...
This is Today in New York with Jane Hansen, Ira Jo Fisher with the weather, Don Gould sports, and the morning commute from Shadow Traffic.
Good morning on this Thursday, May 9th. Mayor Dinkins pleads for our...
From WNBC TV, this is Live at 5 with Sue Simmons and Tony Guida, Al Roker's weather, and Len Berman sports shorts.
Good evening. It's not going to be pretty in just more than 2 hours.
Headquarters of NBC in Midtown Manhattan, this is News 4 New York with Chuck Scarborough, Dawn Fratangelo, Al Roker with weather, and Len Berman with sports. From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York at 11 with Chuck Scarborough, Sue Simmons, Al Roker's weather, and Len Berman with the latest sports.
Good evening. 2 great entertainers have left us.
Sammy Davis Jr. was 64. The throat cancer he'd fought from...
From WNBC TV, this is News 4 New York at 11 with Ralph Penza, Carol Jenkins, Ira Joe Fisher with the weather, and Sal Marciano with the latest sports.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mary Savello. Carol is off tonight. The hunt is on for the kidnappers of a little Long Island boy.
This is WNBC 4 New York. And now, this is News 4 New York.
And good evening, everyone.
This is WNBC 4 New York.
Good evening, I'm Sue Simmons.
And I'm Chuck Scarborough.
This time tomorrow.
This is WNBC 4 New York. And now, this is News 4 New York.
And good evening, everyone. Chuck has the night off. I'm Matt Lauer.
And I'm Sue Simmons.
This is WNBC 4 New York.
Good evening, I'm Lou Young with Carol Jenkins. Ralph Penza is off tonight.
This is WNBC 4 New York. And now, this is News 4 New York.
Good evening, I'm Sue Simmons.
And I'm Chuck Scarborough.
WNBC 4 New York. And now, Jane Hansen, Mary Savillo, and Joe Whitty. This is Today in New York. You're watching WNBC 4 New York. And now, this is Today in New York.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Perry.
You're watching WNBC 4 New York. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Carol Jenkins, Al Roker, and Len Berman. This is News 4 New York at 6. You're watching WNBC 4 New York. And now, Ralph Penza, Barry Peltz, Ira Joe Fisher, and John Frankel. This is News 4 New York at 11.
Good evening. A grieving Israel decides...
You're watching WNBC 4 New York. And now, Sue Simmons, Matt Lauer, Al Roker, and Len Berman. This is News 4 New York, live at 5.
You're watching WNBC 4 New York. And now, Ralph Penza, Andrea Hall, Janice Huff, and Vince DeLisi. This is News 4 New York at 11.
You're watching WNBC 4 New York. And now, Sue Simmons. You're watching WNBC 4 New York. And now, Sue Simmons, Matt Lauer, Al Roker, and Len Berman. This is News 4 New York, live at 5.
Good evening. A day of mourning for a murdered police officer, a day in custody for the man who allegedly killed him.
You're watching WNBC 4 New York. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Sue Simmons, Al Roker, and Len Berman. This is News 4 New York at 11.
And good evening. Sue is off. I'm Carol Jenkins. New York State is very close tonight to having the death penalty once again.
Half the state legislature approved the plan tonight. The other half is expected to do the same thing in the next few hours. And
you're watching WNBC 4 New York. And now, Sue Simmons, Matt Lauer, Al Roker, Len Berman, live from the Today Show studio and the window on the world. This is Live at 5.
You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Jane Hansen, Mary Savillo, and Joe Whitty. This is News Channel 4, Today in New York. You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Jane Hansen, Maurice Dubois, and Joe Whitty. This is News Channel 4, Today in New York. You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Jane Hansen, Maurice Dubois, Joe Whitty, and Fran Charles. This is News Channel 4, Today in New York. You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. This is News Channel 4, Today in New York. 4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Michelle Marsh, Dean Shepard, and Joe Whitty. This is News Channel 4 Midday.
Winter.
You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Sue Simmons, Jim Rosenfield, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4, live at 5. You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Sue Simmons, Dean Shepard, Al Roker, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4, live at 5. You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Carol Jenkins, Al Roker, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 6. You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Michelle Marsh, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 6.
Good evening, I'm Carol.
You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Sue Simmons, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 11.
Tonight, South Florida gets a taste of the trouble.
You're watching NBC for New York. And now, Linda Vaquero, Rob Morrison, John Marshall, and Bruce Beck. This is News Channel 4 at 11.
You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Sue Simmons, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 11.
Good evening. Sue's off.
You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Michelle Marsh, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 6.
Commuting chaos in Bergen County. A train derails. Several people are suspended.
And the rift over rents heats up. A decision tonight could affect hundreds of thousands of tenants in rent-stabilized apartments. Good evening. Right now, officials are trying to get stranded passengers back on the move again.
You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Sue Simmons, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 11.
Haunted New York.
You're watching NBC for New York. And now, Sue Simmons, Jim Rosenfield, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4, live at 5. You're watching NBC for New York. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Michelle Marsh, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 6.
You're watching NBC for New York. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Linda Vaquero, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 6. You're watching NBC for New York. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Sue Simmons, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 11. You're watching NBC for New York. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Sue Simmons, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 Olympic Edition.
Good evening. Masked militants go on television with their...
You're watching NBC for New York. And now, Sue Simmons, Jim Rosenfield, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4, live at 5.
Good evening, I'm Rob Morrison. Jim's off tonight. This storm is dangerous, and we're getting word now it has become deadly.
You're watching NBC for New York. And now, David Ushery, Carolyn Gussoff, and Joe Moreno. This is News Channel 4, Weekend Today in New York. You're watching NBC4 HD. And now, Linda Vaquero, David Ushery, Janice Huff, and Bruce Beck. This is News Channel 4, live at 5. You're watching NBC4 HD. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Sue Simmons, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 11. You're watching NBC for New York. This is News for New York.
A pregnant NYPD officer and her husband are arraigned for their alleged part in the shooting of another New York City police officer. Senator Hillary Clinton continues to answer questions about Iraq during her weekend conversations with voters in the Granite State. Bear scare, the dramatic rescue of a bear stuck in a tree for hours.
You're watching NBC4 HD. And now, David Ushery, John Marshall, and Bruce Beck. This is News Channel 4 at 11.
Good evening, everyone, and we begin with the arraignment of that veteran officer.
A chilling report. Police say the men charged in the murder of a doctor's family broke into other homes the night before.
I requested one investigation. Governor Spitzer under fire as the Ethics Commission enters the fray.
A special camp that gives young survivors a place where they can just be themselves.
It's crazy. $42 for just over an hour. Just over an hour.
And the most expensive parking in the nation and its effect on traffic congestion.
You're watching NBC4 HD. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Sue Simmons, Janice Huff, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 11.
Good evening. They could face death by lethal injection.
Tonight, a Connecticut prosecutor says he will seek the death penalty. The fast track to fatter pensions, a Long Island Railroad insider arrested in the disability scandal.
Governor Patterson confronts the budget mess. Are our taxpayers refusing to share the pain?
And the affordable way to go green. It might even help your allergies.
Live from Studio 7E in Rockefeller Center, this is News for New York.
Good evening. Welcome to News for New York at 6. We are coming to you from our new studio and content center, which we'll tell you more about later on. But first, the news. What could be the first of many arrests has been made in the Long Island Railroad pension padding scandal.
Homicide, a ruling tonight from the Los Angeles coroner in the death of Michael Jackson.
A cabbie is killed after picking up a fare in the Bronx, the second such killing in a week.
A powerful symbol, the so-called last column, has returned to the site of the World Trade Center tower.
And why and where Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi wants to pitch his tent in our backyard.
Live from Studio 7E in Rockefeller Center, this is News for New York.
Good evening, everyone. Was Michael Jackson murdered?
Live from Studio 7E in Rockefeller Center, this is News for New York.
Yes, it was a tough day.
This is New York Nightly News with Chuck Scarborough, live on New York Nonstop.
Good evening, everyone. Chuck is off tonight.
Live from Studio 7E in Rockefeller Center, this is Today in New York.
And good morning, everyone.
Live from Studio 7E in Rockefeller Center, this is Weekend Today in New York. Live from Studio 7E in Rockefeller Center, this is News for New York.
Now,
live from Studio 7E in Rockefeller Center, this is News for New York.
Good evening, world.
Live from Studio 7E in Rockefeller Center, this is News for New York. Live from Studio 3C in Rockefeller Center, this is Today in New York. Today in New York starts with breaking news.
Two people.
Live from Studio 3C in Rockefeller Center, this is News for New York.
Good afternoon.
Live from Studio 3C in Rockefeller Center, this is News for New York. Live from Studio 3C in Rockefeller Center, this is News for New York.
Good evening. Right now, a suspected...
Today in New York starts now. And good Sunday morning to you. Welcome to Today in New York. It is the
News for New York at 11 a.m. starts right now. Hello, everyone. On this dark and stormy Monday morning, I'm David Ushery. Stacey's off. Now,
News for New York at 4 begins now. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us.
News 4 at 6 starts right now. Good evening. I'm
News 4 New York starts now, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Adam Cooperstein. Celebration still in full swing after.
The world's most famous Christmas tree wows thousands in one star-studded event. News 4 New York at 11 starts now. Good evening. We're glad you are with us tonight.
Right now on Today in New York, bending the curve, encouraging signs that the
Now at 11, just days after finger-pointing, progress. A compromise reached today in our country's capital.
This is the most devastating day in the history of Virginia Beach.
Now on News 4 New York at 11.
Sudden blast surveillance video captures the explosion that killed a worker and sent flames tearing through a cosmetics plant.
Plus, Matt Lauer fired. The new allegations surfacing against the former face of NBC's Today Show. And this.
3, 2, 1.
Shining bright, the world's most famous Christmas tree wows thousands in one star-studded event. News 4 New York at 11 starts now. Good evening. We're glad you are with us tonight. I'm Stephen Holt.
And I'm Stacey Bell. Natalie has the night off. He was supposed to co-host.
I'm for New York. We're for New York. You got it. Let's show the rest of the world how it's done. I'm for New York. We're for New York. We're for New York. You got it.